Action. We're on the air. Hi, I'm Sarah,
I'm Amy.
and we're the Semicolon sisters. We want to introduce ourselves to you and tell you a little bit about us.
Hey,
And
Sarah,
yeah,
hold
what?
on.
What?
It just now went live,
Yes.
so I don't think that the first part where you introduce yourself actually got on. So let's
Okay.
let's do it again.
Start over again.
Okay?
Okay. All right.
Yep. Just
Hi.
count down like three, two, start
Okay.
over again.
Okay. Action. Hi, I'm Sarah,
I'm Amy.
and we're the Semicolon sisters. And we want to introduce ourselves to you and tell you a little bit about us and how our journeys with IBD started and tell you where the name came from. Uh, so I'll get started. My journey with IBD started in September of 2004. That summer, I was working at a camp called Sea Salt, and it was great. I loved it. I had a great time. Feeling good going into my senior year of college. I was going to be leading Act Two, the traveling drama troupe at my school, and had all these plans for everything that I was going to do. And then was looking into going to grad school the next year after graduation. And so in September of 2004, we were on a retreat and we went to this camp out in the woods, the mountains somewhere, probably near Traveler's Rest. And I started feeling bad and I was like, oh, well, we've been busy. I'm eating camp food. It's gross. It's probably a virus. I'll be better later. And then I didn't get better. And then but I didn't want to talk about it to anybody because it was gross. Because I wanted to, be ladylike and be a nice Southern girl who doesn't talk about those things. And so I didn't really tell anybody what was going on. My roommate knew that I didn't feel good, but that was about it. Um, and then after about 2 weeks after the retreat, um, I was getting ready for class and I looked in the mirror and my skin was gray and I felt really weak. And I walked over to my bed and I collapsed. And then my best friend said, I'm taking you to the doctor today and you need to tell him everything. And I still didn't want to tell him anything. But then I said, I fainted this morning. Here's how I've been feeling. I've lost some weight. And then at the very end of the appointment, he said, are you seeing blood in your stool? And I said, yes. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have told him if he didn't ask because it was so gross to me. I didn't want to tell anybody about it. And he goes, what? Yeah. And so he said, well, I'm going to give you this medicine. And if you don't get better in a few days, I'll send you to a gastroenterologist. And I was terrified. I really thought it was going to be horrible. And I didn't want to go see a gastroenterologist. So I waited a while and hoped I would get better, but I didn't. So then I called for the referral, and that took about a month until I could get in to see him. And that was in December of 04. Had my first colonoscopy in January of 2005, and then was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And I didn't really know what that meant. He didn't tell me that it was a chronic. He wasn't a really good doctor. Like, he was okay, but bedside manner was terrible, and he didn't give me a lot of information. And I didn't really know anything about chronic illness, so I didn't know to ask any questions. And my dad drove me to the appointment, and he didn't ask any questions either because we didn't know what was going on. And so he gave me a prescription that had three refills on it. And I thought, okay, so I'll finish this bottle and the three refills, and then I'll be better. That's really what I thought. And didn't get better. And then had to start on a new medicine. And that was interesting because I was living in a suite with three other girls, and this was an enema. And I had to do it every night. And then after I did it, I had to sit on the bathroom floor for 30 minutes. I wasn't able to move because if I stood up, it would come out. So that I told my friends about it, and I was like, so I have to do this every night. Here's what it is. Luckily, one of my suite mates was pre-med, so she diagnosed me with everything under the sun and told me she knew everything and not to worry. And but that enema, as gross as it was, it worked really well. It did. I was terrified about it. And the funniest thing was at the time, my uncle was my pharmacist, and he kind of knew what was going on because he knew what the medicine was, and he knew my doctor. And so the first day I went to pick it up, it was in this big box. It was like, I don't even know, like probably a foot tall and 6 inches wide. It was huge. And he lays this big box down on the counter, like, and it said in really big letters on the side for rectal use only. And I was like, can I get a bag to put that in? They were like, yeah. Because I didn't want to walk out with that big box that said for rectal use only on the side. So I did that. And that worked for a couple of months. And I was feeling really good and still traveling. And I was co-directing and singing in a musical at the time. It was March by then, and everything was going good. And then in April of that year, right around my birthday, I started feeling really bad, and I didn't know what was going on, but my body started to reject the medicine I had been taking, and it just stopped working. And I thought maybe I was stressed out because it was the end of the year and I was going into exams and graduation and getting ready for the summer. And so I was like, I'm just stressed. That's all it is. I'm stressed out. Just get through school, get through graduation, go home, and I'll be able to rest, because I had about 2 weeks of not doing anything before I was going on a mission trip to Greece. That was the plan. And then after Greece, I was going to go work at Sea Salt again, the Christian camp where I had worked before. And my friends, I got worse and worse. I started losing weight, like a lot of weight really quickly. I was weak. I wasn't able to eat anything without being in really bad pain. I called my doctor and told him what happened. And he said, well, your blood work was okay. And at the time, again, I didn't know to ask questions. He hadn't done blood work for like 2 months, and he didn't do any new blood work to find out what was going on. And then another week went by, and I called again, and I was like, hey, something's really wrong. It hurts. I can't eat. I go to the bathroom, maybe 20 times a day, and I was seeing blood every time. And my doctor wasn't there that week. I talked to another one. He called in some labs, and I couldn't drive because I was too weak and I was dizzy all the time. So a friend of mine drove me to the hospital to do my lab work. And then the next day, the dorm beside us was having a cookout. And my friend said, do you want to come to the cookout? I was like, no, I don't really. I haven't eaten any of that. And I just feel really terrible and I need to sleep. And that weekend, I slept all weekend. I had finished all but 2 of my exams. And so Friday afternoon, I went to sleep and I didn't wake. I don't think I woke up for like 24 hours. And then I slept again. I woke up and ate something and went back to sleep until like Sunday. And then later on, I guess it was Sunday. It was Sunday. My roommate was like, you need to eat something, you need to eat something. And she brought me a hot dog. And I didn't know that was a bad idea. And I ate, and I had some birthday cake in there too, because it was a few weeks after my birthday. So I ate half a hot dog and some birthday cake. And it just got worse and worse through the night. And then by the end of the night, I was crawling to the bathroom, and my best friend, Kelly, came in and saw me in the floor. Oh, and I didn't say, during this time, they also wanted me to call my parents and tell them how sick I was, but I said no, because they'll just worry, and I don't want them to worry about me. I just have to get through exams, get through graduation, I'll be fine. But then Kelly saw me on the floor that night, and she said, I'm calling your parents. And I said, okay. And I so vividly remember sitting there on the floor in my dorm room and her standing there on the phone with my parents. I remember it so well. And he called my doctor and he said, okay, meet me at the ER. And my parents said, okay, we're on the way. Get to the ER, and they had done some blood work, and I could hear my parents, or I heard my mom's voice. They were looking for Sarah Neely, and they said, oh, she's back there. She's in the bathroom. And I came out and I saw my parents, and my dad said, look at her. and I just collapsed and I started crying. And at that time, I think I'd lost about 20 pounds. I think I weighed somewhere around 80 pounds then. And I was 23 years old, so not good. And I didn't realize how sick I had been, but my heart was working overtime because of all the stress my body was under, and I was really anemic and losing lots of blood, and it just was really bad. I didn't know how sick I was, and I was kind of in denial about it anyway. So, and I asked my doctor, can somebody bring my laptop so I can do my exams and finish them? And they were like, no, you don't need to do that. And they told the professor who I was going to go to Greece with, she could go to Greece. But we were still thinking that I would work at camp that summer. And I asked my doctor, how long do you think I'll be in here? He said, maybe a week. But a week turned into a month, and went from that doctor to not really doing anything other than steroids and fluids and blood transfusion, but just nothing was getting better. So my uncle told my dad about a doctor in the next town over in Spartanburg, South Carolina, that was really good, that had helped his daughter-in-law. Said that's who she needs to see. Got an appointment with Dr. France, got transferred to that hospital. Lots of different medicines, but eventually we found one that worked, that I was able to take orally, because what had happened was every medicine I took would do fine through IV, but then as soon as I tried to take it orally, it just wouldn't work. So eventually we found one who put me on cyclosporin, which is an immunosuppressant that, transplant patients use it to keep their immune system from attacking the organs. So we did that, and that worked well. They sent me home, and I did really well for about a week. And then after about 6 days, things just went downhill again. In the bathroom 6 times a night, easily 15, 20 times a day, I don't even know. And so I had been in the bathroom all night, and my dad doesn't sleep well. And so he heard me. He knew I was up all night because he was up too. He kept hearing me. He was really worried, and so called the doctor, and he said, bring her back in. They admitted me again, and all this time they'd been talking to me about removing my colon, but I just was scared of that. Didn't really know what that would mean for me. They told me I'd have to have an ostomy, and that scared me to death. And I just thought that was the worst thing in the world. And they brought people to talk to me in the hospital about getting a colon out and having an ostomy, but they were all old people who wore ugly clothes. And I was like, no, I am not old, and I do not wear ugly clothes, and I'm not doing that. Because I thought that I would have to wear like big poopy pants to have the ostomy, because everybody who came to see me wore big old poopy pants, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But anyway, talked about the surgery again, and the surgeon came in to see me, and he said, if you don't do the surgery, you won't live to the end of the month. So that kind of shared with me the gravity of the situation. I didn't really understand how serious everything was until then. I knew I felt terrible. I knew I felt like I could die, but I just didn't know how soon, I guess, or how serious it was. And so got my colon removed. My body went into shock. So I spent, just because of all the stress, and they gave me the wrong medicine after surgery, and it wasn't working. And so I was in a lot of pain. My heart rate went up to 192. Went into cardiac care unit for 5 days until they got it back down to normal. And then had to learn how to take care of the ostomy. That was really hard, but you just do it because you have to and you figure it out. So I figured it out and dealt with it, and kind of had to make peace with that. And went home and was told to eat anything I wanted and stay hydrated, and gain weight, try to get back up to 100 pounds. I was around, the lowest I ever got was to 72, I think. So I was around 72 pounds after that. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't really walk long distances. Just staying home, sleeping all day, basically, and learning to eat again, and learning how to deal with the ostomy and all of that. So that was for 3 months. And then I went to Charleston to MUSC and had a J pouch reconstruction. That's where they close out the ostomy and put it back in. And then they take, they left 8 centimeters of my colon, and then they connect that to your small intestine and make a little pouch to act kind of as a colon. And that's when my dad first said semicolon. He said, "You don't have a colon, you have a semicolon. And it's even kind of shaped like one because it's like this." And went through that surgery. Okay, that one was a lot easier than the first one, and I was a lot healthier too. And went through that. That was in September of 2005. And that one was hard too. When I lost some more weight, I got back down to around 80 pounds because after the reconstruction, your body is relearning how to go to the bathroom the normal way. And so you kind of have to figure out what medicines you can take and what you can't take and what you can eat and what you can't eat to try to gain weight and to keep you from running to the bathroom all the time, and kind of relearning how to control your bowels, I guess, kind of like potty training again. That's kind of how I think of it, because you have to relearn how to do that because you haven't done it for 3 months, and you have to kind of get back into that, and recovered from that, and was able to get back to semi normal life. I got a job in January of 2006 and worked there for a few months. And then in May of 2006, I got a job at another camp. And one thing that I love to tell people is the day that I went to hospital in May 2005, in May 2006, it was on that same day I learned how to rock climb. So it was 1 year later, and I went from almost dying and 78 pounds and not able to stand up on my own or go to the bathroom on my own, and to getting healthy, and God seeing me through that, and lots of support from family and friends, and having to learn how to live with a chronic illness. And the first time they told me that it was chronic, that there was no cure, was not until I had the J pouch reconstruction. Because a lot of the surgeons said, well, after you get your colon out, you'll be cured and you'll be fine. It'll be great because this just affects your colon. You'll be fine. But then after that, they said, well, I mean, yeah, you got your colon out, but you're not cured. You'll always deal with this, and other things can happen. And that was something that I wish that I had known. I wish I had known to ask these questions and have someone to talk to about it who had been through it before. And but through that year, through all of that, learned a lot. God totally changed my plans in every way. But that turned out to be a good thing. It was so hard in the midst of it, but it turned out to be a good thing. And became a lot stronger, a lot closer to God, and kind of grew up through that. I was 24, and that's kind of a finishing college, and that's kind of a formative time. And I was really jealous of a lot of my friends because they were getting married and having kids, or getting jobs and apartments and going off and doing these things. But I was like at my parents' house, and I needed help to take a shower or get dressed. And that was really hard. But through that, God taught me a lot about relying on Him and relying on other people. And I was always the kind that I just did everything myself, and I thought I did everything right. So I had to be humbled through that. And it's really humbling when you have a nurse wipe your butt for you. That's so humbling the first time that happens. or like when I was in ICU, I had a male nurse and a male cardiologist come in there and put a heart monitor on me, and I couldn't move. So they moved me around, and it was so painful and it was so weird. And I'm basically sitting there half naked, and they're figuring, looking all over you and staring at you. And the second hospital I went to was a teaching hospital. So you have people come in and look at you like you're a hamster in a cage and try things on you, and that's weird. But it was really humbling, but it was hard in the midst of it, but it turned out to be something that has completely changed my life, and brought me closer to God, made me a stronger person, made me a more empathetic and passionate person. Um, and I don't know how it's hard to describe it, but it was something that I would never want anyone else in the world to go through it, but I wouldn't, because the things that I gained afterwards are immeasurable. So 2006, um, and then I think it was, what was it, a couple, maybe a year or so after that, when Mamie started to have symptoms. And it was because of what I had gone through. She knew that she needed to go see a doctor. And so I'll let her tell you about her story.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Um, I'm 3 years older than Sarah. So while she was going through this, I was actually pregnant with my first daughter. And so one of my, I mean, not that it's a good memory, but this is like one of the things that sticks in my head about this time with her. We all took turns kind of going and sitting with her in the hospital. None of us had ever really been sick before. And so now we know, like, if you're in the hospital, you just need to sleep. But then we thought somebody needs to be with you at all times. So we just took turns. Well, my mom and dad would stay during the day, and I was working about an hour away from where she was staying, so I would just leave um, work, drive down, sit with her in the hospital, and watch American Idol.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the Carrie Underwood year, so that's like a something that sticks in my mind. Driving down from work and watching Carrie Underwood, even though I was cheering for Bo Bice.
Me too. I remember that. That's what I always,
The only two I think that voted for Bo
yeah.
Bice, but I really wanted him to win. But yeah, I just remember driving down. We'd watch American Idol, and I didn't even know I was pregnant at the time actually, and thought, man, I'm tired, and took a test, and I was like, oh, I'm pregnant. That's why I'm so exhausted all the time. But going through that and like expecting my first child and sitting with her, and I mean 70 pounds is small, and I can remember her getting out of the bed one day, and I mean she was just bones, just skin and bones walking. It was really scary, and because none of us had ever dealt with something like this chronic disease, and a disease that's like, she's wasting away in front of us, what do we do? It was really scary for all of us because we'd never done, our family had never been through anything like this before. So, we thought we'll get through it. She'll have the surgery and she'll be okay. And then, like she said, it wasn't until after her J pouch that we were like, oh, this doesn't go away. So that was another thing that we're like, all right, well, we'll just learn to deal with it. And of course we have, and she has, and so we got through it. And she, just like she said, she went and worked at the camp a year later, and we're like, all right, we're good. Um, but I would say well, after I had my daughter, the whole time through the pregnancy, I would have these like intense pain in my stomach. And every time I brought it up to my doctor, I mean, it was like a pain, like a contraction pain that you'd have to stop and breathe through. And every time I brought it up to my doctor, he was like, there are those Braxton Hicks contractions, totally normal. And I was like, okay, fine, fine. You're right. I'm a crazy first time parent. I'm overthinking everything. You're right. Um, but they continued to my whole pregnancy. And then after my daughter was born, regular delivery and everything was fine. And I lost all the weight, which everybody wants to lose the baby weight, but then I continued dropping weight afterwards. So I'm 5'9", which is pretty tall, and normal weight for me is like 150. And so I got back down to the 150, and I was feeling good, like, yeah. And everybody's like, oh, you lost baby weight, you look great. I'm like, yeah, thanks. And then it just continued to drop off, and it didn't matter what I ate or didn't eat. The exhaustion started, and but anytime I ever said anything to a doctor, it was like, oh, you're a new mom. Of course you're tired. Don't you want to lose the weight? Everybody wants to be skinny. You're okay. Never had a doctor even ask to do blood work on me, which is weird. But I'm from a really small town, and the doctor that I saw then had been practicing since I was a kid. And so I think he was just in the mentality of like crazy woman, or, overprotective mom or whatever. But I didn't, just like Sarah said, I didn't have the thought or the even think that I had the option to go somewhere else. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Well, it's my body, and so I should be able to choose my doctor. But at the time, I didn't have the mental clarity or even the thought to say, like, yeah, just go find somebody else who will listen to you.
We
So
we had never been told that like it's okay to question a
it's okay to
doctor.
question your doctor. Yeah, yeah. And I've heard that from a lot of other people too.
Mhm.
That you can ask your doctor why. Why do you think this? Why do you think this way? And could we do something different? And if they say no, well, then say, well, I'll go find somebody who will. Like I don't have. You're not the last person that can tell me what to do with my body. So, but I just continued to follow his advice, and he was like, eat more. And so I would eat more and never had any gastrointestinal symptoms. It was just my body could not absorb the calories for whatever reason. So, because of what Sarah had gone through, and because, and I was kept dropping weight, I got down to about 120 pounds, which is pretty low for me. And I didn't look good and I didn't feel good. That was the number one thing. I was just so tired and exhausted all the time. And this was been about April of the year after Sarah had gotten diagnosed. So this would have been April 2007. Um, my daughter had her first birthday. We'd gotten through all of that, um, and we're so maybe it was 2008. Anyway, I remember we had her first birthday, and I was like, all right, I made it through the first year. Things should start getting a little bit easier. She's going to sleep through the night. I'm not having to nurse her anymore. I should be good. And I just couldn't get over it. I couldn't get past that hump, that fatigue, and the weight loss and all of that stuff. I had a colonoscopy right before her first birthday, and they're like, there's a little bit of inflammation, but nothing to be concerned about. You're good. Come back when you're 40 or 50, whenever you start having those. Come back when you're 50. I was like, okay, good. I'm good. That's great. Well, similar to Sarah, my symptoms started kicking in around April. Family took a dose of the stomach bug and it went around once. Everybody had it. And then I was the last one to get it, and mine never went away. And so that was the trigger that kind of started mine. And just the diarrhea would not stop. And then when I started seeing blood and I called the doctor and I was like, hey, here's what's going on. And he goes, well, let me look at your stuff. Oh, your colonoscopy looked great. You're fine. Well, that was in January and this was April. So, and I didn't even think to say, hey, things might have changed in the last few months. I wasn't having diarrhea multiple times a day back in January. I am now. I'm having more pain. I feel worse. But I just said, okay, you're right. I'm fine. He suggested taking Imodium. And so I tried that, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then once I started seeing blood, but at this time, I mean, even after seeing what Sarah went through, I still, in my head, was like, it's not as bad as I think it is. It's not as bad as I think it is. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I just thought I'll just hold it all together and make it to the summer. And then once summer gets here, my husband will be home. He was teaching at the time. He'll be home more, and I can just take a break. Um, and one morning, I took my daughter. No, I don't know what we were doing. But for some reason, I was on my own that morning, and I went to Walmart and stand in line at Walmart and passed out cold. And if you want to be embarrassed, just pass out in the aisle at Walmart sometime and wake up to the Walmart greeter asking you if you're okay. And, it is not something that you want to do. So I got up, I'd driven myself there, and I pulled myself together and had some water and was like, all right, this is something that I need to let somebody know about. So I called the doctor and I was like, look, here's what's going on. I passed out at Walmart. This is bad. And he said, meet me at the hospital. So much like Sarah, I go to the hospital and they admit me immediately. They do my blood work and they're like, oh, you're in danger of cardiac arrest because your body's working too hard to support, your dehydration and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it's a good thing I came then, right? They admitted me and I was there about a week and they did a colonoscopy and they diagnosed me with ulcerative colitis then too. So the only example I had was Sarah. That was it. And so here I am with a 1-year-old and 28 years old, and like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to be a mom? How am I going to be a wife? How am I going to, take care of a house and all those things that I'm expected to do? Um, so yeah, it was really scary. It was really scary. Um, they did a blood transfusion there, which I'd never had done before. So that was really scary. And they were out of room on the gastro hall, I think. It was weird. They were doing construction or something. So I ended up on this weird hall with people yelling all the time. And I was like, this is my life now. This is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be in the hospital with crazy people yelling in the hallway. And the squeaky wheel gets what it wants. And I just sit here eating my chicken broth, jello, and popsicles that can't be red or purple, and just miserable in a hospital in my little tiny town. So my doctor, did the same thing that everybody else goes through, the steroids. And I went from, I think I gained 40 pounds in a month because nobody had told me that steroids not only make you really hungry, but they make you gain weight. And so I was like, I'm hungry. I hadn't eaten in like 6 months. And so I'm going to eat, and I'm going to eat like 2 lunches some days, and I'm going to eat 3 dinners some nights, and finish every night with a pint of ice cream because I'm starving. So yeah, I packed down the weight pretty quick. Never had any stretch marks when I was pregnant. All my stretch marks are from gaining 40 pounds in a month from steroids. Get the
How
chipmunk kinks and
many
all that stuff.
how many milligrams a day were you on of
They
steroids
started
back
me
then?
on 80 and tapered down from there. So I did 80 for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then they tapered me down from there. So um, so yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, I really did respond well to everything at first. Everything worked really well. It was oral medication and steroids, and I was like, all right, this is it. This is going to be, the same kind of thing, and I won't have to go through what Sarah went through because that was scary for all of us. I mean, for everybody involved. And so even though it still took about 6 months for me to get diagnosed, it would have taken me a lot longer if if Sarah wouldn't have gone through what she went through. Um, but yeah, when I was in the hospital, I think I had my blood transfusion, or I was getting ready to have it, because I remember Sarah, I remember you saying, all right, this shot's going to make you throw up.
That
Because
yeah,
they
that
put
was
two different shots in before you get your blood transfusion. And they put it in, and I'm like, trash can.
uh,
And I had my blood transfusion, and you're like, and they're going to come in every like 15 or 20 minutes and check on you. And so, she was there to help me kind of learn the ropes of what it is to have IBD and how to live with that and deal with that. And she had already had her colon removed and been through all of that. Um, so she came in, and I don't think we had a habit of making comic books in the past. It wasn't our thing, but we've always been quite creative, the two of us. We made uh, a TV show back when we were in elementary school, SDN News. Sarah was a star, and I did everything else.
I was the anchor
Several
and
music,
co-anchor.
yeah, and we did several music videos whenever we were kids too, with a sheet in the laundry room and Dad's old video camera. And so we've always just been like the entertainers of the family, that's for sure. We were in charge of keeping everybody smiling and happy. So she shows up with a comic book that she had made, and it's The Adventures of the Semicolon Sisters. And so that's kind of where our name came from. And Sarah, do you still have the comic book?
I do. It's I got the idea when I was sitting on the toilet. I was sitting there for I was I was in there for a
Yeah.
long time, and I got the song in my head. Let's call the whole thing off. And I was thinking, like, Mamie was going through the same thing, and I was like, I have a colon. She has no colon. I have a, and then there were like different things that I was going through. Let's call the whole thing off. I have a colon. You have no colon. I eat. You eat peanuts, but I can't eat peanuts. And it like started from that. That song was in my head. And then I got this idea of being like my superhero name was Sarah the Colonless Wonder. And I would like attack people with, I don't even remember what it was, like it do with my semicolon. I don't know how I would do that, but that was how that came up. But yeah, I remember it. I think I can't remember if you were still in the hospital or if you had gotten out. And I actually wrote it on my notebook that I had used at camp that summer. I still had pages in that notebook, and I wrote it in the notebook from camp. I still have it. Um, and I just remember thinking, like, she's had all these people coming in to see her all sad and crying and worried and upset. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be happy and upbeat, and we're going to laugh. And so I made the comic book, and we're superheroes. And at the beginning of it, I wrote the long-awaited and triumphant debut of the Semicolon Sisters. And our dad was the first one who said semicolon, and that just always stuck in my head. And then at camp that summer, they called me Semicolon because everybody had nicknames. And I told everybody, like, hey, you wonder where I am? I'm in the bathroom. Here's what happens. If you see me in the bathroom, 5 times a day, don't worry, it's normal. Because when you're working at camp, you're in close quarters with everybody. Everybody knows your business. So I just told them my business. So they all called me Semicolon. And so, yeah, so that was where the idea came from. And, and I wanted to add in as well, after I had gotten my first teaching job, that was in the fall of 2006. And I was doing really good. No medicines, no surgeries, no problems, doing really good. And then one day I woke up and my feet were hurting. And it kind of felt like I had a cramp in my foot. And I was like, it'll be okay. And it felt better. And then it started feeling it every day. And then my foot got really swollen up. my husband, I wasn't married then, but he's seen them now. If you've ever seen the movie The Nutty Professor, and when he's in the red car and he turns back into Professor Clump and his foot blows up real big, that's what it was like. It was huge. And I couldn't wear a shoe. And then I started using crutches, and I got diagnosed with gout, and it wasn't gout. And then I got x-rays to see if it was broken or had a hairline fracture, and it wasn't that. And even went to my gastroenterologist, and my dad was like, is this related to her ulcerative colitis? And he said, no, it would be both feet. It wouldn't just be one, it'd be both. And so, and for the longest time, it was just one foot. And I remember going to our cousin's wedding on crutches, and everybody was like, what's going on? I said, I don't know. I have something wrong with my foot, but we don't know what's wrong with it yet. And then maybe a couple weeks after that, the other foot swelled up, and then I was in a wheelchair for a while. And then they said, okay, yeah, you probably have arthritis. You need to see a rheumatologist. There were only 2 rheumatologists in Spartanburg County where I was living. And then around December of 2006, I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And that's something that sometimes comes along with IBD. And there's other things that can come along. And that was another thing that I was like, I mean, they had to take out my collar and they're going to cut off my feet. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
But they.
Yeah, and I think that's something really like to explore maybe in another podcast sometime, just to explore like other systemic things, because it's not just a digestive disease. It can be anywhere through your whole body. It can be systemic. Your joints, your eye, both have problems with our eyes, our skin, mouth, things like that. So it's not just, a pooping disease. There's a lot of other things. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think it's something that we can definitely explore with other people too, and just kind of talk with others sometime about how systematic, I think is what it's called, symptoms that you have, other than just your stomach and, going to the bathroom. There's lots of other things that go with it too. Yeah.
And so the point of this podcast is kind of like what both of us said before. We didn't know anything about chronic illness. We didn't know anything about IBD. We didn't know what questions to ask. We didn't have anyone to talk to about it. Even after Mamie saw what I went through, and I still kind of felt like, well, you don't question doctors because they're smart and they know everything. And you just do what they tell you to do and deal with it. And so I wish that I had someone there to say, ask questions, be
Yeah.
an advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Look for other solutions. There are other ways. And I feel like if my first doctor, he wasn't very good. I feel like if my first doctor had done a better job, I wouldn't have gone through what I went through. It wouldn't have gotten as bad as it did. A lot of people talk about natural remedies that have helped them, and I've kind of gone past the point of where natural remedies help. But I wish that I had, like, he didn't even talk to me about diet changes. I have some friends who have done like vitamins and probiotics and diet changes, and it's helped them, a great deal.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things I wish I'd known in the beginning. So we want to be there as support for other people going through it, and just to kind of link arms with you and say, like, we're here, we understand. Um, what do you need? What do you want to know? And we'll try to tell you everything that we've learned about it on our journeys, and try to be that support through that. And if you ever have questions, we want to help answer them and give advice and support and love and prayer, because that's what we needed the most in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And just to be somewhere where you can ask those questions and say like, "Hey, is this normal?" Or because even if you're in remission, even if you're active disease, there's always questions. But yeah, like Sarah said, it's just about being an advocate for yourself, or having someone who can advocate for you if you're too sick to even do it yourself. That's so important because I think being your own advocate is such a big deal, because you know your body better than a doctor does. He can't tell you how you feel. He can't tell you what your energy levels are. He can't tell you what your symptoms are. Only you can do that. And so you have to be an advocate for yourself. It's such a huge thing. So that's like my number one message that I tell people. And if you're too sick to be your own advocate, then bring somebody with you to every appointment and have them make notes for you, so that you can know what the doctor said, and not have to rely on your own memory, because Lord knows that this will give you the foggiest brain and
I
that you've
feel like
ever
you have
had.
dementia sometimes.
Yeah, it's just so hard to think clearly when your body is in such turmoil.
And
Yeah,
you're
but
not sleeping, or you don't have energy, and
yeah,
you're, taking different medicines that might make you kind of loopy or foggy. And it's, yeah. So,
yeah,
yeah. And just to end, um, I'll just put in this one last thing, just to give an example of what we were just talking about. I got, I think we had this stomach virus go to our house, is what happened a few weeks ago. And I got really dehydrated, had to go to the ER just to get some fluids. And my husband was there with me, which was great, because I needed him. I needed him there to talk for me when I couldn't, because I was in a lot of pain. I was having trouble talking through the pain. And told the ER doctor what I was allergic to, and he didn't believe us. And told him I was allergic to morphine and couldn't take it, and he didn't believe me. Told him why I was allergic to it, what happened, why I couldn't take it. He still didn't believe us. And then my husband spoke up and was like, the last time she took it, she couldn't breathe. Her whole body turned red. She had to be put on oxygen. And another time she took it, and he told me that I was incorrectly dosed. They didn't give me enough. And I was like, well, when I had it in a drip after
yeah,
surgery, it still didn't work. It was in a constant drip, and it still didn't work. And then he finally believed us. And I had to about when I had been in ICU and all that. So, and that's something that I would have never, ever done in the beginning, to speak up and disagree with the doctor and stand up for myself. I would have never, ever done that in the beginning. So, um, learning to be strong and finding your own strength, wherever that comes from, wherever you find your strength, um, find it and claim it, and be confident in what you know about yourself and your body. And don't let other people kind of push you around and dismiss things that you know are true and you know are important.
right,
So
right,
that's our
yeah,
message.
yep, that's it. All right,
Mm-hmm.
talk to you
Thanks.
later.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye. Stop broadcast.